Hey, how you doing everybody? It's KB5MIQ Big Boy. Got old ham radio cat up here being sassy in my lap. Let everybody see you. Everybody asks about you. We got a few subjects we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about some good stuff. Alright, there's going to be 2 slides on here for Hamfest and Tailgate sales. Of course, we've got our 4-stage amateur radio club tailgate sale in April. WW5AH made up a really nice slide for it with directions, talking frequencies, all that. It'll be on here. And I got one, I believe it's for Baytown Hamfest. I got it off Texas radio operators page. Both those slides will be on here along with the usual stuff. May try some different sequencing on there. You may see some of them before the end of the video, some of them after, depending on how the editing goes. Got one thing I want to give a shout out to right now, and all you guys who are interested in Logbook of the World or new to it like I was, you really need to check out Suburban DXing WX0V Scott, his video called A Look at Logbook of the World. Now, I've talked about Scott before in here where he really helped me out a lot trying to get set up on Logbook of the World, because it was kind of a chore for me. And I still had a few questions, but I hated to keep asking and bugging him about it, and this video explained a whole lot more of it to me and got me up to date with it. And Scott, that was an outstanding job. I wish I knew how to put a link to it on here. One of these days I'll learn that, but Suburban DX is his channel, and the video is A Look at Logbook of the World, so check it out if you're really interested in getting set up with that. Okay, I got a subject here we're going to talk about that probably I may offend some people. I hope I don't. I hope I can talk with it in a meaningful dialogue. When I first read this 3 days ago, I couldn't have talked about it because I was mad at what something was said. But we're going to talk about it anyway. The hot subject now has been the 3 Yankee 0 Juliet expedition. I believe that's the right call sign for it, and I did pronounce it wrong in my last video. I said O instead of 0, and I was corrected on that, and I appreciate it. Claiming they've had a lot of intentional jamming issues on that expedition, which is sad because they spent a lot of money to do those, and they had enough environmental obstacles to overcome with that expedition versus having hams causing the problem they did. All right. Of course, in typical fashion, there's a whole lot of people got their own viewpoint on this. This is the one that really made me mad. Ever since they dropped the code requirement, it has let all the riffraff in that have no idea about radio very sad. Well, that really kind of set me off on referring to me as riffraff. I told y'all before my history with CW. I tried to learn it, and I have hearing issues. And honestly, back in '91, I could have got a medical waiver and upgraded. But I knew how well that would be perceived back then, because I'd already seen comments about that in QST and other magazines at the time, people complaining about people getting a medical waiver for CW and being able to understand people talking to them. So I didn't do that. I wasn't going to do it. I really figured they would drop it sooner or later. And at the time, I was making all the radio I wanted with 10 meters. All right. Before we go into how we can possibly remedy this, or at least start to work on this issue of bad operators and problems like that on HF nets, let me remind you CW guys of one thing, that believe that us non-CWs are the problem. All right, this has been going on forever. Even back in 1917, Hiram Pierce Maxim, one of the granddaddies of ham radio, wrote about it in 1917 in the old man column, Rotten QRM. That's probably when it was all CW. You jump ahead here to my time in radio. In 1991, there was a little group on 3853 at night that I couldn't even believe then hadn't been shut down by the FCC. And all those guys passed a minimum of 13 word per minute code to be on there. They give their call signs. They didn't care. Nothing but racial statements, sexual statements, cussing, drunkenness on the air, running excess power, cussing people out that tried to check in with them that wasn't part of their group. Just a madhouse. And that was in the 90s. You look at what's going on today. Look at 7200, 14313. How many of those guys passed 13, 20 word per minute code? And to top it off, the infamous 10-meter beacon station. If you look at his biography, he's extra class ham in 1998, so that means 20 word per minute code. Now, how do we work on this? I believe Elmering, effective Elmering, your new guys, is probably the best way to do it. But let's talk about some of the suggestions I saw on how to rectify this and my viewpoint on that. Several people saying we need to DF them and go confront them and cut their coax. We're self-policing. Well, I agree with us being self-policing, but we're not police. And if you show up on another man's property and start that, at the very minimum, you're probably going to get a trespass and vandalism charge filed on you. At the very worst, it could end up in violence. If you could DF a station that's causing that problem and get a call sign, just report them to FCC repeatedly. People say the FCC won't do nothing. They did something to us. We had a repeater up back in the day that got to hanging up, and I didn't have access to it. The guy that had access to it couldn't get out there sometimes on a regular basis to unclear it. And we had a ham from a neighboring town called the FCC on it. They immediately called the licensee of that and said, hey, fix it or shut it down. So, prompted they will do something. Hopefully they will anyway. I don't know what all the answer is. I did look at something on the current question pool. And I don't understand a few things on it, because I did a video last year on the old tech question pool. And I had a few questions in about what was being put in it, but let's go over this. And we're just not going to do the whole pool. We're just going to go over the amount of questions in each sub-elements. Sub-element commission's rules. There's 6 exam questions on a tech test. All right. Operating procedures. There's only 3 questions on the tech test. Amateur radio practices. There's only 2 exam questions. Electrical principles is 4, electrical components is 4, practical circuits is 4. Signals and emissions, 4 questions. Antennas and feed lines, only 2. Safety, 3 exam questions. All right, now, that's on a 25 question test. I think we need to add some more questions. I think we need to add up to maybe a 35 question test and add on those low questions, add more questions about operating procedures, rules, antenna propagation, things like that. I've said all along the tests need to be a little harder. I'm going to make another statement, and you may think I'm being, jumping back and forth about CW. Even with my hearing, I learned 5 word per minute. And I think everybody can learn 5 word per minute. And if they can't, the medical waiver, I'm sure, is still available. Or make it available. I think one of the mistakes they made is when they revamped the licenses. I'm glad they dropped 13 and 20 word per minute code. That's just my opinion. Crucify me if you want to. That's just my opinion. But I wish they left the license classes the same. Novice, Tech, General, Advanced, Extra. Just drop the code requirement. The reasoning, novice 5 word per minute. If a person gets on the air, he's either got to work CW or he can only work voice in 10 meters, which will expose him to HF and work in DX and get some training in that band that might help him in the other bands. Then get Tech and get all the advantage of the VHF stuff that's available, 50 megahertz and up. Give them more time to learn it, and then get General, and then maybe they've learned enough by then to be a decent operator on the rest of the bands. I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. I think having those classes still there with the 5 word per minute, I don't have no problem with. Now, when it comes time to Elmer, and here, well, let me back up. Here's another option. Now, VEs can do this probably now, and it might be a good suggestion for VEs to do this. If you look at a National Electric code book and open the first page, the ones I used to get when I was doing electric work said this. The requirements set forth in this code book are the minimum requirements for a safe installation. They may not reflect the best or the most efficient, but the best for a safe installation. Well, if you look at a ham license like this, and you explain to a guy when he gets a ham license, this is the minimum requirements for the class license you're getting. You should continue to study, research, learn about this hobby as you go along. I've been a ham since '91. I'm an extra class now due to the CW dropping. I've never claimed that I know everything about ham radio. And if you find a ham that says, I know everything about ham radio, that's probably the one guy you don't need to listen to. All right? On Elmer, I get lots of emails since I started this channel, and lots of questions and comments, and I'm tickled to death to answer every one of them. But I've never answered a one of them with the words, you should do this because this is what I do. You should buy this radio because I'm telling you to buy this radio. I don't do that. I will say, hey, this is how I do this. You can consider it that way. Here's a reference material that supports it and give you the opportunity to study it and see if that works in your particular application. Or I'll help them figure out a way to look it up for us both to learn it. Or if I don't have any idea what they're asking, I'll say, hey, let me put this before the 10-meter group, and I'll try to get you an answer. And in most cases, I've been able to come up with them some advice. But I never tell somebody, you should do this the way I'm telling you to do it. But that's not right. It's condescending, and you're not helping them learn. If you just answer their immediate question, and that's all they learn about it, they're not learning anything. So when you Elmer somebody, try to use that approach. Don't give them the snarky answer, you should have learned that and you took your test, or everybody should know that, or you do this because I'm telling you to do it this way. And don't give them the NASA engineer answer. It's really impressive if you can draw the schematic to a nuclear reactor on a cocktail napkin by memory, but this guy may not be that adept in electronics. So you've got to help these guys get the information they need. That's why I've tried to give away these books. And I've had more than one person comment, why are you giving a 40-year-old book away? For this reason. The information on operating practices, antennas, and propagation hasn't changed. The only thing that's changed is the technology of the radios. When you teach somebody this, we've got to be able to teach them to where they can learn it and in a manner they can accept it. And they also need to be taught this. We're all, when we get this license, we're all custodians of this hobby. And it's up to us to keep it going. I've never understood why old hams don't want new hams in it. Because you're dealing with the federal government and overseeing this. And I'm afraid if the level of active licenses in this country ever drops below a certain number, somebody in government will say, hey, look at all these radio bands we could be selling. We don't need these guys. There's only this many of them left. Let's shut it down. We don't want that to happen. We got a lot of new people coming into this hobby. With social media being what it is, we're going to have to try to mentor as many of these people as we can and be a good elder to them. All right? That may sound rambling. I hope that didn't make anybody mad, but blaming the problems in ham radio on the people who didn't do CW is wrong. All right, guys, I appreciate it. I hope that made sense. We're at 841. We're going to do another giveaway at 900. I got one more of the hardback handbooks and a speaker. MTC sponsored us. We're going to do a radio giveaway at 1,000. Y'all watch these slides. We're going to have these slides in here every month, every video until the Ham Fest and the Tailgate sale happens. And if you got any questions on them, let me know. Y'all remember Main Trading Company in Paris? He has got a lot of used gear hitting the site right now, and got a lot of good looking stuff up there. This is KB5 MIQ Big Boy 73.